In order to understand the context of the number 33 this far into the series, I recommend you to have watched the first 5 minutes of part 1 if you haven't already done so. I'm going to begin this part by looking at the number 9. I'll be utilising the numerology calculator linked in the video description, so you can follow along and check each of my values as I go. The word number equals 24 in Chaldean numerology, plus the digit 9 makes it equal 33. So number 9 in this form equals 33 in Chaldean numerology, and 37 in Pythagorean numerology. The number 18 also equals 33 in Chaldean numerology. In fact, any multiple of 9, so long as the digits add up to 9, will equal 33 in Chaldean numerology, as well as 37 in Pythagorean numerology. The reason I've highlighted the number 37 is because 37 is a star number, which leads me on to discussing the next topic of interest. A star number is a centered figurate number, or in other words, a centered hexagram, a hexagram being a 6-pointed star. A hexagram is formed by the conjunction of two equilateral triangles, one pointing upwards, the other pointing downwards. The upwards pointing triangle is a rudimentary symbol that represents the masculine, while the downwards pointing triangle is a rudimentary symbol representing the feminine. The joining of the two represents a duality, or an indivisible duality. The hexagram is a symbol that represents God. Genesis chapter 1 verse 27. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. This is reaffirmed in verses 6 to 9 of chapter 10 in the book of Revelation. But from the beginning of the creation God made them male and female. For this cause shall a man leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife, and they twain shall be one flesh. So then they are no more twain, but one flesh. What therefore God hath joined together, let not man put asunder. Within the hexagram is the shape of a hexagon. The hexagon creates the image of a three-dimensional cube. This cube is relevant to the one mentioned in the book of Revelation, chapter 21, verses 15 to 16. And he that talked with me had a golden reed to measure the city, and the gates thereof, and the wall thereof. And the city lieth foursquare, and the length is as large as the breadth. And he measured the city with the reed, 12,000 furlongs. The length and the breadth and the height of it are equal. The city being spoken of is the kingdom of heaven, out of the dwelling place of God, as mentioned in Revelation chapter 21 verse 2. And I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven, prepared as a bride, adorned for her husband. This verse also reaffirms the significance of the unity of masculine and feminine as a representation of God. The symbol of the hexagram represents the indivisible duality or individuality of God. This is why mankind, being made in the image of God, was created in the form of man and woman. All individuals consist of both masculine and feminine properties for their existence. The combination of these two properties is how all life comes into being. This is the correct interpretation of the hexagram. Now that you've seen the correct interpretation of the hexagram, I'll cover the false interpretation of the hexagram, which is held most notably by the Freemasons. Instead of believing the two equilateral triangles to represent masculine and feminine for individuality, they instead think they represent good and evil. The Freemasons utilize the hexagram to support what they think is the indivisible duality of man, consisting of both a good and evil nature. One triangle for good, one triangle for evil. Because they think man consists of a good and evil nature, they therefore think the creator of man also has a good and evil nature. This false sense of lawfulness and godliness is the reason why the Freemasons do the immoral acts that they do. This is why you'll find the usage of the hexagram within their works. It's only because they believe it to mean good and evil. The false good and evil perspective of the Freemasons is the reason behind their prolific use of the black and white checkerboard symbology. The number 13 is also a star number. The letter M is the 13th letter of the English alphabet. This is why the use of the M hand sign is used secretly among members of Freemasonry. M, the 13th letter, is used to symbolize the false interpretation of the hexagram of good and evil. Masonic M equals 33 in Pythagorean numerology. The Freemasons refer to key Bible verses as a way of reaffirming the validity in their false perspective of individuality. One of these verses is Proverbs chapter 11 verse 1. A false balance is abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight. The false balance that God is referring to is the false interpretation of indivisible duality of good and evil held by the Freemasons, while the just weight of God's delight is in reference to the true indivisible duality of masculine and feminine. Another symbol of importance is the pentagram, along with its link to the golden ratio. While the pentagram has become associated with evil, this is a corruption of the intended meaning behind this symbol. Here I'm going to show the positive connotation behind this symbol. In order to understand the value of the pentagram, one first needs to understand the divine proportion, or what's otherwise known as the golden ratio. The golden ratio exists when a quantity is divided into two specific parts. The two parts are in the golden ratio when their ratio is the same as the ratio of their sum to the larger of the two parts. For example, the ratio of the length of the entire line, A plus B, to the length of the larger line segment, A, is the same as the ratio of the length of the larger line segment, A, to the length of the smaller line segment, B. This happens only at the point where A plus B is roughly 1.618 times A, and A is roughly 1.618 times B. A plus B is to A as A is to B. Alternatively, B is roughly 0.618 of A, and A is roughly 0.618 of A plus B. The value of the golden ratio is abbreviated to the term phi. Phi, with a capital P, is equal to roughly 1.61803398887, and phi with a lowercase p is equal to 0.61803398887. Phi just so happens to equal 33 in English ordinal gematria, P being the 16th letter, H being the 8th letter, and I being the 9th letter of the English alphabet. 16 plus 8 plus 9 equals 33. The golden ratio exists between segments of the lines that make up the pentagram. For example, the ratio between the lines B and A are the same as the ratio between the lines D and C. B is to A what D is to C. Same rules apply as given with the first example. A plus B equals C, and C plus the previous value B is equal to line D. This sequence of adding the latest two values to equate to the following value is the same as can be found within the Fibonacci sequence. The Fibonacci sequence or series is formed by adding the latest two numbers to get to the next one, starting from 0 and 1. Here is a demonstration of this method. 0 plus 1 equals 1. 1 plus 1 equals 2. 2 plus 1 equals 3. 3 plus 2 equals 5. 5 plus 3 equals 8. 8 plus 5 equals 13. 13 plus 8 equals 21. And so on. This sequence correlates with the golden ratio, as between any two successive Fibonacci numbers, their ratio is close to the golden ratio. Although not as close to begin with, but as the numbers in the sequence get higher, their ratios approach phi, the golden ratio. For example, the ratio between 3 and 5 is 1.666. The ratio between 8 to 13 equals 1.625. Even higher up the sequence, the ratio between 610 to 987 equals 1.618. The division of any Fibonacci number by its predecessor approaches phi. represented as 1.618, the golden ratio. A rectangle where the longest side is 1.618 times that of the shortest side can be referred to as a golden rectangle. A rectangle like this one can be made using square tiles whose size equates to each successive Fibonacci number from the beginning of the sequence. A spiral called a Fibonacci spiral can be created by drawing circular arcs connecting to the opposite corners of each of these squares. The Fibonacci spiral is an approximation of what's called the golden spiral, which looks something similar to this one. The proportions of the golden ratio can be found within God's creation, for instance in the proportions between the metacarpal bones and the phalanges of the human hand. For example, the size ratio between the first segment in blue and the second in green is approximately 8:5. Between the second and third, the ratio is approximately 5:3, and between the third and the fourth, the ratio is approximately 3:2. 2, 3, 5 and 8 are each corresponding numbers in the Fibonacci series. The golden spiral can be found, for example, in the design of this nautilus shell, or in the arrangement of the seeds in this sunflower. Also, the inspiration of the pentagram can be seen behind the design of the petal arrangement in various flowering plants. Pentagram equals 33 in Chaldean numerology. You can find more examples like these within nature to do with the pentagram, the golden ratio and the golden spiral by researching these topics for yourself. I hope that my short explanation behind the true meaning and the significance of both the pentagram and the hexagram has allowed you to be able to see them in a new positive light, allowing you to discern between the false connotation and the true connotation. Subscribe if you like the content in this video, and until the next part, take care and God bless.